All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and your attention and for joining me for this incredible, fascinating topic of people pleasing. And you probably saw I kind of tongue-in-cheek named this webinar today, Transform the Disease to Please Without Feeling Like a Bitch. Something that I've noticed inside of myself and a lot of the clients I work with is this I feel bad feeling that happens. And it's very fascinating to me. And I've been tracking this through my nervous system and tracking this feeling bad through my clients as well. And I look forward to sharing so much about this topic today with you. So get to ask yourself, do you over-explain why you can't do something? Rather, if somebody has invited you out and you feel the need to, over-explain why you can't go or justify these sorts of things. Do you apologize when you don't need to? This is something inside of my mentorship program that we looked at a lot of this sorry, and in this group online, every week the women would come and I would say, who's next? And there would be, in the initial weeks, there would be a lot of like, oh, excuse me, sir. Oh, I don't know. Oh, all of this posing and positioning that is so ingrained and so taught. It's palpable, right? Like it's so conditioned and it's icky and it's so disempowering to see humans not being embodied and not knowing their worth. And I speak from my personal experience, and I'm going to be very vulnerable, sharing some personal stories with you here today throughout our time together. So that is my intention, to be relatable and to humanize this, what I call, disease to please, because it literally is a disease, or at the very least leads to disease, leads to dis-ease in our mind, body, or emotional body, or energetic body. Do you feel bad saying no when someone requests something from you? Maybe they want to borrow something, or maybe they need some of your time or your energy or attention for something. Or maybe it's in your business and they want to pick your brain. Ever had that? People want to pick your brain for free. And all this energy is going into people sort of wanting to pick your brain or take freely. And they will if we don't have healthy boundaries for that. So do you shut down your own voice or your own inner knowing so you don't rock the boat, or hate that idea of conflict, of someone being disappointed, being upset, or even judging or criticizing you? The very thought of that perhaps makes you go, oh gosh, what are they going to think of me if I do say this or don't say that, or do show up for this or don't show up for that? Do you want to appear, or don't you want to appear needy? So you become hyper independent. You end up doing it all on your own, so you don't have any needs from anybody or anything. That you become sort of this idea of perfectionism can come out of that too, right? We show up so perfectly and like we have it all together, and have a very difficult time asking for support or asking to have our needs met when the time comes. Do you put others' needs and desires ahead of your own consistently? And then one way to know that you're in conditioning and in people-pleasing conditioning is if you feel exhausted. So these are just things to reflect on and consider as we move through our session today. One of my favorite quotes, so poignant, so simple, and so essential. Don't waste an incarnation in fear. So much of our life is lived not being ourself, not being our whole authentic self. And I know inside of my life, I got sick and tired of myself not being in my wholeness. And it's a work in progress. Life is a beautiful evolution and journey. And I feel like it really is the only game on town. Like, where are we putting our attention? What are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the external of all the things that we think are going to make us feel secure or feel happy or feel okay outside of ourselves? Or are we willing to do that deeper work so that we can liberate ourselves from these conditioned patterns of fear and scarcity and lack. All right, why you're here today, you're conscious, you're ready to transform people-pleasing tendencies. I'm imagining you want to feel more empowered in your life and live as your true self. And you want to embody self-worth, self-respect, and live your truth, not as a nice concept or idea, but as the person you came on this planet to be. So let's transform these people-pleasing conditions and programs so that you do feel empowered and know your worth and can live authentically. Now, authentically doesn't always mean it's comfortable. In fact, it probably won't. So a bit about me before we dive in. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Melanie or Maduri, and I support women to free themselves from patterns of thinking and believing that create suffering in their lives. And these aren't my credentials, but ways in which I've lived my practice and what I teach is healing myself from an autoimmune condition that was nearly 10 years long. And I've gone from literally being one of the world's biggest people pleasers to creating a successful business. I've written 2 books. One of them is a bestseller. And today I've built a life on my own terms, and I make fun a priority. I make skiing and climbing and being in nature and also rest and rejuvenation a priority. So I literally went from being broke, suffering with an autoimmune condition, and quite honestly, a long string, when I look back now, I didn't realize it at the time, but of unhealthy relationships in every level, like from romantic to business relationships. There was a lot of pleasing going on. There was a lot of not knowing how to set healthy boundaries and not knowing how to value myself for myself in this world. And now I live a very different life where I feel very different inside of myself, and I relate to my external world, i.e. other people in relationships, finances, health, all in a different way. So my big why is really to support those who are interested in living from this place of truth. And when I say truth, I mean that big T truth. So we have our little T truth of like, this is my truth, which is another expression of the ego. Nothing wrong with it, just good to name. And the big T truth, which is like, who are you really? Why did you really come here on this planet, in this body, to have this experience? And what I found is if we haven't said yes to that consciously, we are flapping around in the wind and we are getting blown here and there. That might show up as health problems. That might show up as emotional, mental distress. That might show up as energetic imbalance. And you'll know by just looking at your current life where you're not in your wholeness. And another way I could say that is, what are your challenges right now? What are you challenged by or with externally and internally? So today is for you if you take on too much because you feel that it's really hard to say no, or feel that you have to, or feel a sense of obligation. If you find it difficult to say no and have a lot of guilt around that. And if you people please to literally avoid conflict, or so that you don't make other people uncomfortable or have to put them out or are afraid of their response. This time isn't for you if you'd rather blame people or situations for your life. And I know that might sound a bit harsh, because we can often look to a situation and say, but this is happening. And yes, and in order to liberate ourselves, we have to understand that everything in our life is happening for us and not to us. And that until we can take responsibility for our inner world, it will be very difficult to make changes in our life. So that's that victim energy that we all have from time to time. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. We just don't want to live there because it's such a disempowering place to live in. And I've definitely spent periods of my life feeling like a victim. And again, having very real life situations to support and justify that viewpoint. But ultimately, it's not helpful. And I was not able to be empowered from victim consciousness. We have to shift into a different state of consciousness to have a different experience. So if you want to continue to play small and play out conditioned behaviors that aren't really aligned with who you are, then again, this is not for you today. So today I'd like to show you how to stop people pleasing. And another way that I say this is betraying yourself, how you can do this without feeling bad or like a bitch, and so that you can finally get your time, energy, and self-worth back. So we're going to talk about I'm calling them unspokens, things that are not spoken about. And there's 3 of them that we will cover today, 3 unspokens. And as I said, I'm going to mention some stories just to give you some context and to give you some examples to hopefully trigger examples in your life that you have also been in certain, maybe similar situations or can relate to in your own way. So let's get started. I'll invite you to close all, turn your phone off. Imagine that we are here in person and allowing this to be a sacred space together, and so that we can be present in this time together as well. Okay, unspoken number 1. Knowing your worth can radically transform your health and your life. This is so crucial to exploring moving out of this conditioning of people pleasing. So Dr. Gabor Mate speaks of this. He says, literally, we will choose connection over authenticity. So most humans, like the way that we're conditioned, we're going to choose to belong way before we're going to choose to be true to ourselves or to what is real. And this goes back to like, we are tribal people, and in tribes, if you weren't included, if you were cast out of the tribe, that was pretty much death. It was literally life or death. So this sense of needing to belong and needing to feel safe, and that belonging is very deep. We would say, looking at that first chakra, right? The root chakra, that groundedness, how safe we feel to express, to speak, that throat chakra. How safe do I feel to be accepted? And what does it mean to not feel accepted? And so this is so important to recognize inside of yourself where you choose acceptance or approval over your own truth. So attachment over authenticity. And this is really the foundation of everything we're going to be speaking about today. If you can keep asking yourself that question, and where you may be avoiding inside of yourself that truth, either being honest with yourself, first of all, right? We have to even notice. And sometimes we go through our whole life and we don't know who we even are. We don't know what being authentic even means. Like, what does that mean in this moment or in this scenario? And sometimes it's a health symptom that brings us to this. It's the loss of a loved one. It's an accident. It's the end of a relationship or job that brings up the grief that finally is the mirror for us of where we have betrayed ourselves. So some of you know about this autoimmune condition. It was finally labeled as post-viral fatigue syndrome that I had for nearly 10 years. And I used Ayurveda to heal this. That's how I became a clinical Ayurvedic specialist, through this desire to heal myself when the doctors couldn't support me in any way. And what I realized when I look back, at the time, I didn't see it. But when I look back, I can see so clearly my patterns of pleasing, my patterns of abandoning myself. And especially around that time when I got sick, and I got really sick in India, I was very impressionable. I was a part of a spiritual community for many years. And there's really a lot of beautiful things about that community and a lot of dysfunctional things about that community also, like many communities can be, right? Any kind of organization or group of people can often have a real shadow side or dysfunction. And at that time, I didn't know how to say no. And we were literally worked to the bone. That in the ashram there was a real encouragement of selfless service, which sounds like a beautiful thing, and it is a beautiful thing, but not at the detriment of one's own life force or health. And it wasn't until I started learning Ayurveda that I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't have the capacity to be giving the way that I was giving. And yet I was continuing to, because I thought that was how we're good people, or that's how we're spiritual, or that's how we serve the guru, that's how we serve life, that's how we serve spirit, is through giving. Anyone relate? So that took me many years to understand. And what I see now is that so many humans, particularly women, I see this in, give from an empty cup, give from depletion. And we have been conditioned to be good girls. We have been conditioned to be kind, to be nice. And that saying what we need or want, somehow we've been taught, isn't being a good girl or being a nice girl or nice boy or nice person, right? This is very ingrained. We don't go to school. We're not taught how to take care of ourselves, what self-care is and what it isn't, and what self-love and self-respect are. We're not taught that. And yet it's the cornerstone of a healthy life, in fact, of all of the harmony in our system, in our being, functioning properly, depends on us being true to ourselves and knowing who we are. So my autoimmune condition was a reflection of me not standing in my truth and in my own self-worth, and even standing up to an organization or a spiritual ideology that was based on selfless service. So in essence, I let others determine my sense of self. I let something outside of me determine, am I good? Am I good now? Am I good enough? How about now? How about now? What about this? Do you like me now? It was sort of that energy, right? So my question to you is to really ask you, where in your life do you let others decide who you are? So just whatever comes to your mind, write that down. This is essential to stay healthy in your life. Otherwise, you will get sick. And I don't say that as a doomsday thing, but just in my experience as an Ayurvedic practitioner and an energy healer, and tracking that everybody, I would say 100% of people that come to me with a symptom are not living their true self. They're not being in their wholeness. They're forgetting their connection to the energy of creation itself. So you have to be aware of your nervous system, and when your nervous system is dysregulated and when you're living from conditioning, that's essential to healing this dis-ease to please. So where in your life do you let others decide who you are? How to shift this? 4 main things. Number 1 is the awareness. If we're not aware, we're in a pattern. And for a lot of my life, I wasn't aware that I could be different. I just thought, I didn't even think, it was just automatic, just the way that it felt that I had to be, had to respond. So that's why the second piece, the willingness to do or be differently, is crucial. The third piece, the self-regulation, is essential, because when we step outside of the known, it can feel scary. And especially if we have past experiences, past trauma where we haven't felt safe being who we are. And that's why we create strategies to belong, to fit in. So the minute we let that strategy take a back seat, it can feel terrifying to the ego, to the sense of self, and sometimes can literally feel like death. So the self-regulation part is essential before we can really make those big or even tiny new ways of being, new actions. So getting uncomfortable. So you can start with small things, right? Like if you have that tendency when someone texts you to be like immediately feel like you have to respond. Yes, anybody have that? Maybe your first practice is to slow down and be like, okay, I'm gonna wait at least 3 hours before I respond to any text, or even half a day, or God forbid, a whole weekend, right? So doing something different is key to shifting these patterns. They're not gonna shift on their own. Okay, unspoken number 2, how valuing and respecting yourself is the key to abundance. Okay, I have another little story for you, which is both hilarious and humiliating. So years ago, when I first started practicing as an Ayurvedic practitioner, I was offering Ayurvedic bodywork, Abhyanga massage, oil massage. So beautiful for those of you who have ever had the blessing of receiving an Ayurvedic oil massage. Anyhow, I was starting out and I was seeing people from my apartment. So people would come to my apartment for their Ayurvedic oil massage. And that's how I was running my business at that time. So one day, this woman who I felt a bit like her energy felt a bit dominating. And for those of you who are sensitive types like myself, that's often where we slink into people-pleasing behaviors, is when someone's energy feels abrasive or domineering or overbearing. Can you relate to that? Does anyone know what I mean? That kind of, it's an energetic thing, right? And that will look different for everybody. Yeah, I see you guys nodding. So this one day, this woman, client of mine, came, and I can't remember now because this was so long ago, if she asked if she could bring my dog to her session. Regardless, the dog ended up coming. I can't remember if that was, I don't even think we were allowed to have dogs in our apartment building. She brings her dog. Fine. Massage begins. Great. I don't know how far through the massage, maybe 25 minutes in, her little dog needs to go out to take a shit. And you know who took that dog out for its little poo and walk around the block? Because this woman was lying face down on my table, and she's like, well, take him out. And so I like go down the 3 flights of stairs out. I'm on the like front yard little patch of grass in my apartment building, like with a bag, picking up this dog's poo and thinking in that moment, like, this is not this is not right. Can't quite put my finger on it, but this is not the way it should be going down. And so I tie up the little bag, and I don't have a dog, right? So maybe for dog owners, this is just, okay, you do it. And the point being, I'm not a dog shit picker-upper. I'm a trained clinical Ayurvedic specialist. You did not pay me to walk your dog and take it out for a poo on my lawn. You paid me for a service that and I'm not blaming her at all. This was all on me, 100% on me. I did not know how to set a boundary. I did not know how to say, no, you can't bring your dog. And then I really didn't know how to say, no, I'm not going to take your dog out, because what's the alternative? At that point, that's really the option, other than her putting her clothes back on, going downstairs and taking the dog out. So, I mean, I'm just curious to ask yourself what you would do in that position. Maybe you would have never gotten yourself that far into a position, or maybe you can relate and be like, oh yeah, I probably would have done the same thing. This is a disease, my friends. This is a disease. It is not good. It's a little bit funny. It's a little bit funny. Oh, the question, why isn't it on her? Because I was the one who agreed to all of that. That's why it was my responsibility. And I also believe wholeheartedly in 100% responsibility for our life. It doesn't mean things don't happen outside of us, but I said yes. I did not know how to set a boundary and say no. So that's on me. And especially in that setting, in that context, because I'm the one providing a service and I'm the one that sort of creates the safe space and creates the rules, so to speak, because that was my business she's stepping into, and this is how I work, etc. So that's just an example to share with you my inability to say no. This is also how it comes up a lot of the time. And maybe for you, it's not wanting to be a hassle, not wanting to feel like you're burdening anyone with something, or not wanting to appear needy. I used to have a difficult time asking for a receipt in a store, especially if that store person was kind of like rude. And I wanted a receipt, but it would be difficult if I felt like they weren't very friendly to ask for a receipt. I know it might sound ridiculous, but it's like that asking for, so symbolic of asking for what I need or want, and not being, that's not a ridiculous ask. It's just like a basic thing. But I'm sharing these and being really vulnerable about this to show you and to share with you that this is not something that happens to people that are silly or unintelligent. This is, and all of you here, conscious, intelligent humans, good-hearted humans. So why do we not know how to do this? It's an epidemic. Okay, so in your own life, ask yourself, where am I putting others people's needs ahead of my own? Where am I making other people more important, or their needs, than my own? This isn't about being unkind. This isn't about stepping over people or powering over people. This is essentially getting really honest and taking a magnifying glass to your life to be honest with yourself about, where do I do this? Is it the receipt in the store? Is it in your business? You don't ask for the rate that you're wanting to, or your client hasn't paid you and you don't ask for them to pay, you wait? Or is it in relationship, romantic relationship? You don't speak your voice? It's just inquiry. And we get to sit here in community and get really curious without judgment of ourselves or others. Okay, so that's my dog walking story. And here's the idea, right? I do it all. I did it all. Aren't I so good? I'm so accommodating. I'm so helpful. I'm so easy about things. And we literally have these identities that we even have a hard time inside of ourselves stepping out of, because, well, who am I if I say no? Who am I if I don't want to go to that party on Saturday night and my best friend really wants me to go and I don't wanna? And then we go, oh, I feel bad. So we need to stop feeling bad, because that's an excuse to buffer ourselves from claiming our own truth and speaking our own voice, and it being okay to do that. We don't have to shame ourselves. We don't have to suffer because we've put ourselves first or honored our own inner knowing. So this is crucial in living as abundance. Otherwise, we tolerate a scarcity mindset. We're never enough. So that's another shadow of the people pleasing, is it's coming from a deep sense of not feeling enough. Well, then I have to prove, and I get validation for being good. Or I, get my sense of okayness for saving or helping other people. It doesn't mean we can't be helpful. And I know you're all very loving, compassionate people. But when we do it at the expense of ourselves or out of alignment with our truth, that's when we get problems. Okay, so we can either stay in the same conditioned patterns and look for abundance, success, happiness outside of ourselves by people pleasing, by being accommodating. But my next question for you is, where in your life Are you making other people's needs or desires more important than your own? Maybe it's with relatives, maybe your kids. Oh, that's a real fiery topic, right? For mothers, ultimate self-sacrificers. How do we do this? Ultimate pleasers. I'm speaking tongue in cheek, and it's a real thing for many women, for many mothers. Okay, unspoken number 3. What self-acceptance and love really are and what they aren't. Okay. So another vulnerable story share. As I was preparing for this, I was just thinking and kind of like making a list. This can be something that you do for yourself as well, like a list of places in my life where I've people pleased. I was thinking, like, where did this start? Other than, we're conditioned as kids, be nice, be kind, share, do all these things. So in high school, my best friend had an older brother who had a lot of really good looking friends. And so I hung out with my best friend and all her older brother's good looking friends. And they were probably about 3 or 4 years older. So in high school, it was a kind of a big gap in age. And we would go to parties with these guys and we would hang out with them. And a big joke for these young men, a huge joke. I don't know where it started with them, but everything like they're saying was like, don't be a nag. Oh, don't be a nag. So every time we hung out with these guys, that was like the ongoing joke for years. Don't be a nag. And it would be the same, like at a party, like they'd be like, oh, go get me a beer. And if you'd be like, get it yourself, they'd be like, don't be a nag, like every little thing. And it was kind of playful, but at the same time, and especially at that age, really, when I look back at it now, like really disrespectful and disgusting behavior. Here we are, teenage kids, right? Yes, part of the patriarchal issue in our society and how these young men were brought up to think it was okay. And again, for us girls to be like, okay, like, oh, let me please you. And we would also talk back, but there was a overlying thing that these men were dominating energetically and sort of collectively, because they would all sort of laugh and joke about it, so that whatever we said, and we were younger, and whatever we said or did, you'd be the nag. And that really stuck with me. That feeling of, don't be difficult. Don't be a nag, especially in relationships. Don't be that woman who's needy. So that was one way that I learned to shove my needs so far down in relationships and to please the man. And that ended up in so many different ways, in such different forms of abuse. And that took a lot of years to unravel that energetic samskara, we call it in yoga, right? That conditioning of letting the man, or whoever, in partnership, for me, it was the man, have more power, more requirements, more energy and attention going to their needs or requests, and that mine would be secondary. Can anyone relate to that in relationships in your past, or maybe even your present, where it was like, I have to curtail to this person and not rock the boat and not speak up or say anything or do anything that could create waves, create conflict? So that ties into that idea of just being good, just getting along, not being a hassle, not getting in the way, not causing any more disturbance. So that type of codependent behavior, and essentially people pleasing, that's what we're doing. We're not okay when we're in people pleaser role. We're not okay with being okay with someone else's experience being anything other than okay. So there comes a hypervigilance. There comes up maybe even anticipating 3 steps ahead. I'm going to anticipate this person's needs and give it to them. I was a great waitress. I could anticipate everyone's needs and make sure they had it, right? Like just as they asked for it. So it's not that all of these things are inherently bad, but there's a shadow side to all of these behaviors. It's not that we're going to like throw away our compassion or our kindness or our ability to give or serve or help out, but it's going to come from a very different place inside of ourselves. And it's going to come from a place where we only give when our cup is not just full, but flowing over. Flowing over, not, oh, well, half empty, half full. No, cup full, flowing over. Otherwise, all the attention needs to be on self to regulate the nervous system, to get ourselves back to a place of healthiness, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, spiritually. That it is okay to take care of ourselves. It is okay to have needs. And it's okay to ask for support and to get support. You know, we may not get it from the people in our life that we want it from, but it's our responsibility to create our support systems. And oh my gosh, once I started investing in myself and creating support systems, my life literally changed. My business changed, took off. My relationships shifted. My sense of self. I now ask for receipts at the store. I now do a lot of things that I wouldn't have in the past, including very difficult situations, you know, with family members where it's like, oh God, I really don't want to upset that person because I do care about them and love them. And I've also made it my inner mission for myself to no longer just be in a pleaser role to the detriment of myself, that I will no longer do that. And that's can be very difficult to take those steps. So it's important that you know who you are in order to reclaim your voice and your power. And this is my question for you in this section. Where in your life are you betraying yourself and your own inner knowing? Little typo there. And your own inner knowing. Where in your life are you betraying yourself and your own knowing that you're betraying yourself? Your own knowing that you're saying yes when you mean no. Your own knowing. Let me just share that. I'm looking at it, but there we go. Where have you or are you still betraying yourself? And maybe making excuses for other people's behavior? Okay, so to recap, to the 3 unspokens, we talked about attachment over authenticity and how easy that is. We spoke about the 4 principles of awareness, and inside of that is slowing down, of the willingness to do or be differently, of self-regulation, and getting uncomfortable or doing something, or in essence, being someone different than you have been before. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting more of the same. So how you reclaim your wholeness and connection with source, and ultimately this is what it is. You will not people please. You will not be people pleasing when you're connected to source. Not possible. So when you're in a conditioned response, i.e. people pleasing, putting yourself last, saying yes when you mean no, feeling bad, oh, I feel bad, fill in the blank, you've disconnected from source. Does that make sense? So when you're in connection, when you're in oneness, when you're in wholeness, you will not act out of those conditioned responses. So the fastest way to transform this is be one. Be one with Creator. Be one with energy of consciousness. You can call it source, you can call it God, you can call it spirit, you can call it divine consciousness, you can call it the unified field. When you forget that you are an extension, an expression of Creator itself, so therefore, if you are an expression of source, you have the same qualities of source. You are infinite, you are eternal, you are love, you are consciousness. But when you go asleep and go back into a conditioned pattern, you will disconnect and operate out of your conditioning. So that's really important. And that's really the essence and the foundation of the work that I do with my clients, is supporting people, facilitating people out of operating from their conditioned place into liberation, into a place where they feel whole and operate from a place of their true self or their wholeness. And I see some people are asking questions. I'll open up for Q&A shortly. I'm just going to keep flowing here. Otherwise, I'll get totally distracted. But I'll come back to you. So how to reclaim your wholeness and connection is you have to decide. You have to consciously decide. Not just sit back and be like, oh yeah, that's interesting. That's information. You need to get on your knees and decide. Go into the forest and decide, or in this very now moment, here now, decide. I'm done with this way of being that isn't the truth of who I am anyway. You need to get support. If you could do it on your own, you would have already. And it's not that we can't do it on our own, but our conditioning is so strong that we will so often fall back into our old patterns. Be in these kinds of conversations. Be in these kinds of conversations with like-hearted individuals. Having that community, that sangha is key. And I know a lot of my clients, because we meet on Zoom and people live in different parts of the world, don't feel like they have those communities in their sort of human interaction life. And that's the beauty of technologies, that we can come together in these kinds of experiences and connect and share. So the last two is practice the frequency of. Practice the frequency of. Practice the frequency of the one who values themselves, who honors themselves, who knows that they are allowed to have needs. So you need to give yourself permission. No one will do this for you. No one will permit you to act or be differently, but you get to choose that. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how long you've had a pattern. You get to change it from here, from now, from today. This is what's possible. And from my experience, it's the only way. It's the only way to heal. That's how I healed my autoimmune condition. It's how I healed after my partner's death. It's how I continue to heal every time I'm met with my own limiting perceptions and beliefs and conditioning. I do exactly what I'm sharing with you today. I slow down. I check in. Am I willing to see things differently? Am I willing to be differently here? Yes or no? I come into my body. I notice, where is this sensation of people pleasing, of fear of conflict? Where does that live? How does that feel in my body? Oh my God, it feels like tightness in the throat. It feels like contraction in the solar plexus. It feels like shoulders up by my ears. So you get to track inside your own being what's going on for you. So I have two testimonials I want to share with you from my upcoming program. And after our Q&A, if you're interested, you're welcome to stay on and I can share more about this program. This is from Sharon, and I'll just read it out. You can listen or read along. Unleash, that's the name of the program. Unleash has been a truly transformative program for me and by all accounts for each incredible person in our group. Before the program, I had an idea of what I needed to do and how I needed to grow and evolve in order to live my life more fully, more on purpose, and quite frankly, less stressed out. The big surprise was that the path to inner calm or peace, balanced emotions, and a feeling of being exactly where I'm supposed to be was quite simple and attainable, and ironically, not what I was thinking it would be. Melanie helped me see the parts of myself I'd gotten good at ignoring, and she was able to nudge me past those hidden barriers that kept me stumbling through my day-to-day life. It was an incredible experience to be part of. Melanie's ability to question thoughts or conclusions I never thought to question is extraordinary, and her insight life-changing. Unleash is the perfect name for this program because the freedom I feel after 3 months is indescribable. The most incredible part is that I wasn't even aware that I was tethered. No question, I am incredibly grateful for the entire experience, the courageous woman who shared the journey with me, and for our wise and caring leader. So I share this because I've seen the power of doing this inner work change lives in a really short period of time. And as I say to, with my clients, this is the only work we're here to do. I know it can feel like, well, we've become roles in our life. I'm a mother, I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, I'm a wife, I'm a husband, I'm a this, I'm a that. We become these roles, but ultimately what's underneath that and what is fueling that, if that isn't expanded, if that isn't balanced, if that isn't harmonious, then it will be very difficult to feel peace, to feel that we can even embark on these new ways of being and no longer people please, where we can literally speak up, we can stand up, we can be in our power. And so ultimately it's looking at who did you come here to be and where are you not aligned? Where are you not aligned? Where are you not in your wholeness? So that can be anywhere you're experiencing or buying into the belief of lack, of scarcity, of disconnection, of not enoughness, either believing that you're not enough or that you don't have enough or that there isn't enough. That disease of not enough will show up through our physiology and through our psychology. And it shows up not to hurt us, not to create more suffering, but because on a soul level, your soul is like, that's so not true. You're an eternal, infinite being. You are a divine expression of life itself. And it's like the light on the dashboard going off, the bells ringing saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. Each day that goes by is another day of your life. Done. So I've got one more beautiful testimonial I'd love to share with you, and then we'll open up to Q&A. So this is also from my Unleashed mentorship program. Victoria says, before working with Melanie and experiencing the Unleashed mentorship, I was feeling stuck and fearful about making decisions in my life, experiencing bouts of anxiety for no apparent reason, seeking clarity, trying to figure out what path to take, and mostly trying to figure out who I am at this point on my journey. Every week, there was a little bit more of an inner shift towards understanding myself. Along the way, I realized I was no longer experiencing anxiety. I was feeling more peace and more confidence in relying on my intuition. Melanie helped me to work through my doubts and to see how my thoughts and my perceptions were creating my own suffering. I now believe and trust that I am my own intuitive authority. Not only did I feel the transformations within myself, but I could see the transformations of those in my group. The inner transformation for me helps me to walk through this world in my most authentic, truest self. It's there that I find peace and clarity, knowing I get to choose my life and how I show up in it. This is an investment in love, and I recommend Unleashed wholeheartedly to anyone seeking any type of direction or growth in their life. So I'm going to open up to questions, and then I will talk a little bit about the Unleashed program that is coming up. So if working together feels like something you'd like to do, what I am offering, or my invitation to you, is that to reach out to me, to send me an email, and we can discuss whether this program is a good fit for you at this time or not. It's not necessarily for everybody. And I really love to meet the people and speak with the people that are curious about this to make sure it's a good fit for both. So to engage in a discussion about that, you can send me an email and we can see if this is right for you at this time. It's really for people that are ready to shift and to focus wholly on that liberation and being supported in doing that. So I know that there's been some things going on in the chat. I wasn't able to look up. It's too vata vitiating for me as things are going by, but I'd love to answer any questions that you have from anything that we've talked about inside of today's class. Let me know. You can type that in. Maybe that's the best way to start this. Oh yes, and happy solstice. Happy solstice. So I'm not going to go back and read all the things that have happened, but if you have a question inside there, just type it again so I can see it, because it shows up for me at the bottom. So, okay. Oh, I see a question here at the very bottom. The question is, how did you reconcile the values of the ashram service to others with your own needs? It's a great question. That took me a lot of years to figure out. It took me getting really sick and becoming an Ayurvedic practitioner and healing myself. To be honest, it was many years after that I recognized that I wasn't being kind to myself, and that I wasn't allowing my needs to be fulfilled, and that I wasn't in an environment that could support my needs. And that's a big thing too. Sometimes we're in environments that can't support it. Well, then it's important to take ourselves out of the space or the place that you're not going to be supported, and to get the support from a place or a space that could be. So for me, that meant focusing on my healing. Something really beautiful that came out of that was I began to study energy medicine more seriously, because I realized that the energetics of things were essential in healing. And so now many of you know I'm an energy healer and use theta healing as one of the tools for reprogramming subconscious limiting beliefs. It's so simple and profound, and will alter the vibration, the frequency of your being. And ultimately, that's the work that I do, is to support people to return to the frequency of your essence. Because when you're vibrating at your essence, so if this is your essence, the vibration of your essence, but this is how you vibrate every day, then you're out of sync, you're out of flow with you are. And maybe this is your essence, and you're vibrating like this, right? It doesn't matter. The point is that when we're out of sync with our soul song, our soul signature, the voice of our frequency, there will be dis-ease. There's a gap. There's a disconnect. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me see here. Is the idea to disconnect completely from anything that is causing us suffering or causing us not to be our truest self? Is it possible that I am worried that disconnecting from a certain activity will cause my friendships to grow weaker? So that first question, is the idea to disconnect completely from anything that is causing us suffering or causing us not to be our truest self? So the answer is yes and no. So what's causing suffering is what you're thinking and believing. It's never something or someone out there. And if you are like in immediate danger, then yes, of course, you remove yourself from that person, from that situation. And this is where it becomes a deeper process of understanding that, oh, I'm the one creating my suffering. Like in those 3 stories I told today, I was the one who was on some level agreeing to being taken advantage of, so to speak. I was the one that was vibrationally, subconsciously, I wasn't walking around saying, please take advantage of me, everybody. It's subconscious. And so that's why the subconscious work is essential in healing. Without it, it's a long, windy road. And I walked that long, windy road for many years until I really got that it was a reprogramming of the neural pathways, a reprogramming of our energy that is required to shift into the one who is healthy. So that means if I'm the one who is healthy, I can no longer walk in, carry around, think, believe, and feel the way that someone who's sick does, or that someone who is a victim does. So in essence, it's very simple, but not necessarily easy, right? To step out of who you've been in the ways that are causing suffering, and to step into the one who is living from wholeness, who is living from truth, who is living from that authentic place. Okay. In addition, I think inactivity is not healthy if we are constantly worried how the karma of any of our actions will affect how we perform in that activity. Kushik, I'm not exactly clear what you mean by that question precisely. Claire says, and therein can lie the anger at ourselves, as somewhere in ourselves we do know behind the clouds of so much. Yes, I agree. Deep down, and this is where we do know when we're betraying ourselves. We do know when something's not quite right. It might take months or years to even see it, and that's okay. It's not always easy to see in real time. You know, and sometimes when we get space, that's why meditation is so crucial, because meditation allows us to quiet enough to see, to get perspective, to get space from that which we think we are and that which we really are, which is an infinite divine expression of the light. And until we line up with that knowing and that truth, oh my goodness, it's so difficult to create the outer situations and circumstances that are living in that way. Okay, question here. Once you start to feel and live from wholeness, you will find it hard to go back. Thanks to Melanie, I've been able to move forward with more clarity on self-betrayal. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, thank you, Dee. And I've seen that in you so powerfully and beautifully. Joanne says, so this suppressed anger could cause inflammation in the body. Fire suppressed. Yeah, absolutely. It can absolutely create inflammation. So any kind of friction creates inflammation, right? And for most people, there's a lot of friction going on up here. Beep, beep, beep. A lot of self-criticism, a lot of judgment of self, of other, of situation, of circumstances. There's a lot of discord, a lot of cause for inflammation, for things to be inflamed. So when we're disconnected, again, it comes back to our connection with source. When we're disconnected, we forget that we are loved, that we are whole, that everything that is happening for us and not to us. We forget that. We just go to sleep. We go unconscious. And when we're asleep, our subconscious rules the show. And science now is saying and proving that our subconscious mind is like 95% of what motivates our behavior, motivates us into this world. And most of that subconscious programming is negative. So if you don't have my Theta Healing audio collection yet, get that. Just press play, listen to those audios. This is what those are all designed for, that you literally press play and allow the subconscious to be reprogrammed to something that is more life-giving, that is something more expansive than what you're living. Okay. Everyone's saying yes to inflammation. So much inflammation. And now science, again, is proving and saying inflammation is one of the #1 causes of disease. So much disease. So Joanne says, old experiences not processed cause us to turn against ourselves equals autoimmune. That's been my experience. So in Ayurveda and yoga, we talk about ahankar. Ahankar is a sense of I-ness. Every cell has ahankar. Every organ, every part of our essence has a sense of ahankar, a sense of I-ness, a sense of self. So I learned, or I misunderstood a lot of spiritual teaching about, like, destroy the ego, get rid of the ego. Ego's bad. Maybe some of you have heard this too. So what I come to know is that ego isn't bad. Ego is also source. There are states of ego that are going to be helpful and unhelpful. And when we try to obliterate the ego, or when we criticize or think that there's something wrong with us, there's something wrong with my ego or myself. And that can also look like there's something wrong with someone else. It's just a mirror. You think there's something wrong with someone out there, that's the mirror back into you. And if you go deeper inside your psyche, you'll find that you're thinking all of those things that you're projecting out there about yourself. How dare they do that? That person is this, they're that, they're this, they're this. That same judgment will be playing inside of you because it's coming from you. No one is putting that judgment inside. I mean, ultimately, we've learned a lot of that behavior, but the ego will be very sneaky, especially the spiritual ego. It's the sneakiest of all of them, to live in separation. Oh, well, I'm more this, I'm more spiritual, I meditate, I'm a yoga teacher, whatever the spiritual ego might be saying, to feel a sense of superiority. So you can check that one out when you go to family gatherings. Okay, that's where you get to practice that. Joanne, can you provide a link to your theta healing program? It's found easily on the drop down on my website. I'll send a link in the follow-up email as well, Joanne, so you can check that out. On my website, it says work with me, and there's a whole drop down menu. Oh, and the other thing that I'll just share while you're all so lovingly here is one way that I'm going to be doing this work deeply with individuals and in person is in Costa Rica in December. So we've got some spaces left on the Costa Rica retreat. And I'm stoked about this because we're going to be doing this deep inner work alongside the somatic practices, the physical practices of yoga, of dance, of breath work, of climbing, of rappelling down waterfalls, of hiking in the jungle. We're going to be incorporating all of this holistically into the more true version of yourself, so that you will leave that week the truest version of yourself, which is exciting to me. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? Has this been helpful? I'd love to hear from you. Type one takeaway, something that has resonated with you or something that felt really valuable for you that landed with you today. You're welcome. You're welcome, Julia. You're welcome, Claire. I see how I stopped my success in fear of affecting my relationship with my husband. I would have walked the dog, right? It's good to see what we think we have to do or should do. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you so much for all of you for being here. He says, I'm not a bitch. I'm clear on who I am. Oh, where's this gone? Who I am and what I desire. If that makes me a bitch, that's none of my business. That's right. And I love that Wayne Dyer quote, your opinion of me is none of my business. And let's just lift and clear that whole stigma and identify with bitchiness and with what being a bitch means. Because that's such a term that is used in our society that is thrown out there, and that I believe many of us are, maybe you can relate, fear being called, right? It's like, oh my God, I don't want to be called that. I don't want to be seen as that. And there is a difference, and we know the difference between being clear, what we desire, and that we can be kind and clear. We can be kind and have healthy boundaries. We can be kind and say no. I love that saying, that no is a complete sentence. You don't need to over justify. You don't need to apologize when an apology is not required. Sometimes an apology is required. But a lot of the times we're apologizing when there's no need. So I love this. Yes, you are clear on who you are and what you desire. And that's very powerful. Koshik says, don't allow the fear of the unknown to stop you from doing the right thing for yourself. Beautiful. And that's such a beautiful reflection, because stepping into the void, everything will be unknown outside of our conditioning. Everything. So every time we do something different, it's going to probably activate your nervous system in a certain way. And sometimes that means being silent. Sometimes not people pleasing is saying nothing. Sometimes it's speaking up. But yeah, stepping into the void, doing something different is important to get a different result. Otherwise, we're just going to loop around and around and around. Linda says, reassurance of the path that you're on. Beautiful. Terry, seeing how my decisions are influenced by my subconscious real. Yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. It's the subconscious real that is running the show, unless you're in choice. And that's the distinguishing factor. And when you're in choice and not operating out of automatic program, there's a very different quality in which you live your life. You're more proactive opposed to reactive. And the subconscious real is what is creating the suffering. The subconscious real is what's creating the suffering. And the good news is you get to be the author of your life. You get to be that sovereign being. You do not need to be a victim to your subconscious even. So that's why the awareness is the first step. We have to be aware. If we don't even know, then we don't know. All right. Claire says, yes, it's only an opinion when people say you're a bitch, especially aimed at being a woman. Not for me. Perfect. Is having boundaries with your own thoughts important? I love that question. And yeah, I think so. Because if we don't have healthy boundaries inside of ourselves, then we'll allow ourselves to betray ourselves, to speak negatively about ourselves or towards ourselves or to other people. So really, in a way, healthy boundaries with ourselves and our own thoughts is the first line of action, is the first place that we go to rework and reframe, is saying, what am I allowing in here? What am I allowing to define or to rule, or to what am I giving importance? What am I believing inside of here? Just because you have a thought doesn't mean you have to believe that thought. It's an important differentiation. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's your thought. It doesn't mean you have to believe it. Doesn't mean you have to act on it. Can you imagine if we act on all our thoughts? God, the world would be a much worse place. So that's a beautiful question. Yes, have boundaries with your own thoughts is crucial. It's finding positive role models of people who would normally be called a bitch, but are living to their own beat. Yeah, I love that, because when we let go of all conditioning and can really respect other people, meaning we don't need to get our sense of self from others, whether they say yes or no to us. Maybe they're taking care of themselves. If we stop taking things so personally, then we can reclaim our power. I love that book, The Four Agreements. And one of the agreements is don't take anything personally. So that means the look that person gave you walking down the street. That means the email you got or didn't get. That means what your third cousin says to you. Like, none of it is about you. So not taking things personally is such a spiritual practice. What you get to take personally is how you're speaking to yourself and how you're being inside of yourself. And that's something to take be very mindful about, because that's your reality. What you're thinking and believing about yourself and the world is your reality. So if you want a different reality, what has to happen? You have to think and feel and believe differently. So what's really fun about this work is that we get to, and every moment is a new opportunity to do this, to literally step into who we want to be. And I think it's not about being someone other than who we are. I think it's really stepping into who we truly are and shedding the illusion of disconnection, of separateness. And we get to step into that. We get to practice it and try it on and have fun with it. So if you really want to amp up this practice of healing from being a people pleaser, I invite you to this week, displease one person. Do something or say something that will displease somebody. And then let me know how it goes. Just as an exercise. So we get into the shamanic territory of the coyote medicine. Displease somebody. See what happens. See if the world falls apart. Okay. There's a lot of, life will give us a lot of opportunity to exercise. And I bet even before the day ends, you're going to have an opportunity to practice not stepping into an old habit or role of people pleasing. It might be so subtle. It might be so subtle, or it might be something really obvious. But please give it a chance. And we have to each day, like it's a muscle we're building at the gym. Like anything else, it's a new skill, it's a new language. You can do this. And as you do, you will know who you are more. You'll speak more from a truthful place. You will feel more in your authentic power. You will be more loving to yourself and to others because you will have more energy. If you're tired right now, I can guarantee you are people pleasing. You're betraying yourself. You're staying in a job you don't like. You're staying in a relationship that there's something imbalanced about. You're being mean to yourself inside your own mind. You're not in your wholeness. You're not in your life. Okay. I thank you so much for your presence, for your devotion to this work, to looking inwards and to healing yourself. I really believe this is how we heal the planet. If working together, if you'd like more support from me further, please reach out. You can send me an email. I'll give you my email address. It's m@madurimethod.com. Just put that up on the screen for a second. So just send me an email after this class and we can start a discussion. I can see where you're at in your life, where you want to go, and if Unleashed would be a good fit for you, or if there might be another resource or another direction that would be more helpful for you at this stage. We don't know yet. We don't know yet if working together is the greatest thing, but I would be honored to journey with you further on this journey. It is my devotion and my joy to really support people in their own healing and in their own freedom. So thank you so much. Much love to you all. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.